I was sitting in a private room at Chase Manhattan on Flatbush Avenue when the third bank official walked in with a manila folder so thick it wouldn't close properly. My hands were shaking. I'd taken 2 buses to get there, wearing my golden mustard sweater, even though it hung off me like a tent now, 20 pounds gone in 3 months. The woman across from me had already checked my ID 4 times. 4 times. Like I was trying to pull off some elaborate con instead of just following up on a document I barely understood. The man sat down and opened the folder, and I watched his face change as he read whatever was inside. He looked at me. Really looked at me. At my worn clothes and my tired face and my hands that wouldn't stop trembling. Then he said, "Ms. Richardson, before we proceed, I need to ask you some questions about Eleanor Chen." Eleanor, my godmother's name in his mouth made my throat close up. "What was her favorite flower?" he asked. "Gardenias," I whispered. "She kept them on her kitchen windowsill even though they were expensive and died fast. She said some things are worth it even if they don't last." He nodded, made a note. "What did she call you?" "Her Sunday girl," because we talked every Sunday for 30 years without fail. He closed the folder, looked at the woman, looked back at me. "Ms. Richardson, I need you to sit down for what I'm about to tell you." I was already sitting, but I understood what he meant. I gripped the edge of the table. That's when everything changed. But to understand what that moment meant, you have to understand how I ended up in that chair, in that bank, looking like someone who'd been hollowed out and left to dry. Let me take you back. Back to where this really starts. 3 months earlier, I was standing in my converted attic apartment in the public housing complex on Atlantic Avenue, looking out my one window at the rain falling on the street below. It was April, spring in Brooklyn, when the windows finally open and life starts to feel possible again. But I couldn't feel any possibility. I could only feel the weight of what had happened 2 weeks before. The words were still echoing in my head. My daughter-in-law's voice, low and sharp, her breath hot against my ear at my grandson's birthday dinner. "I refuse to sit next to you. You smell." She'd said it loud enough for others to hear, quiet enough to seem private. Calculated cruelty designed to destroy whatever dignity I had left. And maybe she was right. When you can't afford soap that doesn't irritate your skin, when the building's hot water works 3 days a week if you're lucky, when you've worn the same clothes for months because there's nothing else, maybe you do smell like poverty. Maybe you do smell like shame. I stood at that window and I thought about jumping. Not seriously, not quite. But the thought was there, soft and dark like a lullaby. It would be so easy, so fast. No more shame, no more hunger, no more waking up at 3 in the morning wondering how this became my life. On my bed, folded carefully, was Eleanor's cardigan sweater, the one that still smelled like her after all these years. White gardenias and the lavender sachets she kept in her dresser. I picked it up and pressed it to my face, and I cried for the first time in weeks. Real crying, the kind that comes from somewhere deep in your chest and won't stop. Eleanor had been gone 2 years. 2 years since I'd heard her voice on the phone, laughing at something I'd said, telling me about the new mystery novel she was reading, asking if I'd eaten enough that day. She always asked if I'd eaten, like she knew somehow that food was love, that caring about someone meant caring whether their body was fed. I wished she was alive. I wished it so hard my chest ached, because she would have known what to do. She would have held my hand and helped me figure this out, and she wouldn't have let me feel this alone. But she was gone, and I was here. And there was no one coming to save me. The apartment was so small I could touch both walls if I stretched out my arms. Sloped ceilings that meant I had to duck when I walked to the bathroom. One window that looked out at the courtyard where the neighborhood kids played and screamed and lived their lives while I watched from above like a ghost. On the kitchen counter sat a plastic pitcher of sweet tea I'd made 3 days ago and couldn't bring myself to drink. It sat there turning cloudy, another thing I was wasting. Down the hallway, the framed picture of Jesus that had hung in my mother's house, then my house now here, watched me with eyes full of something I couldn't name. Pity, maybe, or disappointment. I couldn't meet those eyes anymore. This wasn't how my life was supposed to go. I'd worked 40 years as a home health aide, just like Eleanor. I'd saved money. I'd bought a small house in Bed-Stuy, nothing fancy, but mine. I'd raised my son alone after his father left, put him through community college, been so proud when he started his own business. I'd trusted him when he said I needed help managing my affairs. When he put those papers in front of me and said they were just for emergencies, just in case something happened to me. His wife standing behind him, her hand on his shoulder, playing the perfect daughter-in-law. I signed because he was my son, because I believed family meant something. That was 18 months ago. Within 6 months, my savings account was empty. My car was sold, the title to my house was transferred to them, and then the house was sold, and I never saw a single dollar. By the time I understood what was happening, I was being evicted from my own home. My son wouldn't return my calls. His wife blocked my number. The lawyers I managed to consult, using legal aid because I couldn't afford anything else, all said the same thing. The documents were legal. I'd signed power of attorney. I'd authorized everything. The fact that I didn't understand what I was signing, that they deliberately misled me, didn't matter under the law. I had no case, no recourse, no money for a real lawyer, even if I did. My son had taken everything and left me with nothing. His own mother, the woman who'd sacrificed everything to raise him. The public housing apartment was all I could get. A waiting list miracle, the social worker said. Some people wait years. You're lucky. Lucky. I was 60 years old, living in an attic with one window, eating once a day if I was careful, and I was supposed to feel lucky. That birthday dinner 2 weeks ago was the first time I'd seen my family in 10 months. I showed up uninvited because it was Jaden's 7th birthday, and he was my grandson, and I loved him. I thought maybe, after all this time, they'd softened. I thought maybe seeing me would make them remember I was a person. I was wrong. My son's wife took one look at me standing in the doorway, and her face went cold. But she let me in. She let me sit at the table. She even put a plate in front of me, though there was barely any food on it. And then, as everyone was singing Happy Birthday, she leaned close. Her perfume was expensive, something floral and sweet that probably cost more than my monthly food budget. She put her lips near my ear like she was going to whisper something kind. I refuse to sit next to you. You smell. She moved to another chair. Jaden asked why Grandma looked sad, and she said Grandma was just tired. My son wouldn't meet my eyes. I left before they cut the cake. I walked the 12 blocks home because I couldn't afford the bus. It was raining. By the time I got back to the apartment, I was soaked through and shivering, and the golden mustard sweater was ruined with water stains. I took it off and hung it to dry, and I stood in my small bathroom looking at myself in the mirror. She was right. I did smell. Like cheap soap and old sweat and desperation. Like someone who'd given up. Like someone who didn't matter anymore. I couldn't look at my reflection. I turned away. That night, I lay in bed holding Eleanor's cardigan, and I talked to her like she could hear me. I told her everything. How scared I was. How alone I felt. How I didn't know how to survive this. I fell asleep with the cardigan pressed to my face, breathing in the last traces of her scent, pretending she was there, telling me it would be okay. But morning came anyway, and nothing changed. I was still here, in this apartment, with nothing. The days blurred together. I stopped going outside unless I absolutely had to. The neighbors in the complex tried to be friendly at first, but you can only deflect so many questions before people stop asking. The woman downstairs, Maria, sometimes left containers of rice and beans outside my door. She never knocked. Just left them there like offerings, like I was some kind of charity case. I was a charity case. I ate the food because I had to, and I hated myself for it. And I hated that I'd become the kind of person who needed other people's leftovers to survive. At night, I'd hear the families in the other apartments, laughing, fighting, living their lives. The walls were so thin I could hear everything. Conversations about homework and job interviews and what to make for dinner. Normal life happening all around me while I sat in the dark, alone, invisible. I thought about Eleanor constantly, the way she'd call every Sunday at exactly 9 in the morning, like clockwork. 30 years of Sunday calls. We'd talk for hours, about nothing, about everything. She'd tell me about her week, the clients she was caring for, the books she was reading. I'd tell her about my struggles with my son, my worries about money, my dreams for the future. She never judged me, never made me feel small. She just listened and loved me and made me feel like I mattered. When she died 2 years ago, right before everything went wrong with my son, I thought I'd prepared myself. She'd been sick for a while, hospice at the end. I was there when she passed, holding her hand, telling her it was okay to go. She'd looked at me with those clear, kind eyes and whispered, "You're going to be fine, Sunday girl. I've made sure of it." I thought she meant emotionally, that her love would sustain me. I didn't know she meant something else entirely. After the funeral, her lawyer gave me a box of her things, some costume jewelry I'd always admired, her collection of paperback mysteries, hundreds of them, all marked up with notes in the margins, her recipe book, falling apart, stained with decades of cooking. I treasured everything because it came from her. I kept the jewelry in a drawer. The books I couldn't bear to read because they reminded me too much of her voice. The recipe book I tucked away because I couldn't afford to cook anymore, and looking at it just made me sad. I never thought there was anything else. Eleanor had worked as a home health aide her whole life, just like me. She lived in a rent-controlled apartment in Queens, barely bigger than mine. She was always careful with money, but she wasn't wealthy. She couldn't be. 3 months after the birthday dinner, after weeks of barely eating, barely sleeping, barely existing, I got a notice. The storage unit where I'd kept my mother's things, the few boxes I'd salvaged from my old house, was going to be cleared out if I didn't pay next month's rent. I couldn't pay it. I could barely pay for food. I took the bus to the storage facility in East New York, my last $40 in my pocket, planning to sort through everything one final time before I let it go. Most of it was junk anyway. Old dishes, clothes I'd never wear again, photo albums I couldn't look at without crying. I sat on the concrete floor of that storage unit, surrounded by boxes, and I felt so tired. Tired in my bones, tired in my soul, tired of fighting and struggling and trying to survive. I started sorting things into piles, keep, trash, donate, but everything felt like trash. What was the point of keeping anything when I had nowhere to put it, no life to build it into? My mother's box was at the bottom. I hadn't touched it since the funeral 5 years ago. I opened it slowly, not sure I could handle the memories. There were her Sunday dresses, the ones she wore to church even when she could barely walk. Her Bible, worn soft. A jewelry box with nothing valuable inside, just pins and broken chains and things that meant something only to her. And underneath everything, Eleanor's recipe book. I'd forgotten I'd put it there. I must have tucked it away after the funeral, not wanting to deal with it, not ready to sort through Eleanor's things while I was still grieving my mother. I picked it up and the spine cracked, pages threatening to fall out. Her handwriting was all over it. Notes about adjusting spices, substituting ingredients, little reminders to herself. Don't forget vanilla. Needs more salt. Perfect for Sunday dinner. I flipped through it slowly, crying, remembering meals she'd cooked for me over the years. Her kitchen in Queens with the gardenias on the windowsill. The way she'd make me sit down and eat even when I protested I wasn't hungry. That's when the paper fell out. A single sheet, folded in thirds, wedged between the pages for cornbread dressing. I almost didn't open it. I thought it was another recipe, something handwritten she wanted to remember. But the paper was different, heavier, official-looking. I unfolded it with shaking hands. It was a notarized document, dated 6 months before Eleanor died. Legal language I barely understood. References to a case number, a law firm I'd never heard of. Something about proceeds from a lawsuit settlement placed in a trust. My name was on it. Mine. Not Eleanor's family, not anyone else, just me. I read it 3 times and I still didn't understand. What lawsuit? What settlement? Why had Eleanor never mentioned any of this? At the bottom was a phone number for the law firm, a place in Manhattan. I stared at that number for a long time. I had $10 left in phone credit. This could be nothing. Probably was nothing. Some old paperwork that didn't mean anything anymore. But something made me walk outside that storage facility and dial the number with trembling fingers. A receptionist answered. Professional. Bored. I explained who I was, that I'd found this document, that I didn't understand what it meant. She put me on hold. I stood there in the parking lot in the heat, watching my phone battery tick down, thinking any second she'd come back and tell me it was a mistake. There was nothing there. Sorry for your time. Instead, she said, Ms. Richardson, can you come to our office tomorrow? I don't understand. What is this about? I can't discuss details over the phone, but this is urgent. Can you come tomorrow? I had $2 for bus fare. That was it. But I said yes. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed turning that document over and over in my hands, trying to make sense of it. Lawsuit, settlement, trust, none of it computed. Eleanor had never mentioned being in an accident, never mentioned suing anyone. In 30 years of Sunday phone calls, she'd never said a word. Why? I thought about calling my son, asking his advice. He'd gone to community college, taken business classes. He understood legal things better than I did. But then I remembered. He'd used that knowledge to steal everything from me. I couldn't trust him. Not with this. Not with anything. The next morning, I put on my cleanest clothes. The golden mustard sweater, washed and dried on the radiator. Still with faint water stains, but the best I had. I took the bus to Manhattan, transferred twice, arrived at a tall building in Midtown 45 minutes late because I'd gotten lost. The law office was on the 18th floor. Glass doors, expensive furniture in the waiting room. I felt so out of place I almost left, but the receptionist saw me and smiled and said, Ms. Richardson, they're waiting for you. They. Plural. She led me down a hallway to a conference room where 3 people sat around a polished table. 2 men in suits, 1 woman with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back. They all stood when I walked in. The woman held out her hand. Ms. Richardson, I'm Patricia Walsh. I was Eleanor Chen's attorney. Please, sit down. I sat. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clasp them together in my lap. Patricia looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, How much did Eleanor tell you about the accident? What accident? She exchanged glances with the 2 men. 15 years ago, Eleanor was struck by a delivery truck while crossing the street in Queens. The driver was negligent. She suffered serious injuries, back, hip, chronic pain for the rest of her life. I remembered. I'd visited her in the hospital. She'd been in physical therapy for months, but she'd never complained, never made it a big deal. She just said it was one of those things. Accidents happen. She was lucky it wasn't worse. She sued the company, Patricia continued. It took years to settle. The company fought it, but eventually, they agreed to a significant settlement. How much? After legal fees and medical expenses, Eleanor received $1.2 million. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table. She never spent it, Patricia said softly. Not a single dollar. She put everything into a trust. For you. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. She was very specific about the terms. The money couldn't be touched until after her death. It couldn't be accessed by anyone but you. It couldn't be taken by creditors or family members or anyone else claiming a right to it. She protected you completely. I don't understand. Why didn't she tell me? Patricia's eyes were wet. She said you'd try to refuse it, that you'd tell her to use it for herself, to enjoy it. She said you'd never accept help unless you absolutely needed it. So she waited. She made sure that when the time came, when you needed it most, it would be there. The tears came then, hard and fast and impossible to stop. I put my face in my hands and sobbed. Eleanor had known. Somehow she'd known I would end up here, broken and alone and desperate. And she'd protected me. Even in death, she'd protected me. One of the men, who'd been quiet until now, slid a box of tissues across the table. Ms. Richardson, We need to verify your identity before we can proceed. Do you have your driver's license? I didn't have a driver's license anymore. My son had taken my car. I'd never renewed it. But I had my state ID. I handed it over with shaking hands. They made copies, asked me questions only I would know about Eleanor, her favorite flower, what she called me, the name of the church she attended, things no one else could answer. Then they said they needed to contact the bank where the trust was held. They needed to arrange a meeting. Could I come back tomorrow? I nodded, still crying, still unable to process what was happening. Patricia walked me to the elevator. Before the doors closed, she said, "Eleanor talked about you all the time. She said you were the daughter of her heart. She wanted you to know you were loved. Even when you couldn't feel it, you were loved." I cried the whole bus ride home. People stared. I didn't care. That brings us back to the bank, to Chase Manhattan. To 3 officials verifying my identity like I was trying to commit fraud instead of just existing. To the moment when they finally told me the amount. After 2 years of managed investment growth, the man said, opening that thick folder, "The current value of your trust is $892,000. I heard the words. They didn't make sense. I asked him to repeat them. $892,000. It's all yours, Ms. Richardson. Tax-free, protected, irrevocable. I think I stopped breathing. The room went fuzzy at the edges. The woman reached across the table and took my hand. "Are you all right? Do you need water?" I couldn't answer. I could only sit there, gripping her hand, trying to understand that this was real, that Eleanor, who'd been dead for 2 years, who I missed every single day, had just saved my life. More money than I'd seen in my entire life combined. More money than I'd even imagined having. Enough to buy a house, to live on, to breathe for the first time in 2 years. "There's something else," the man said. He pulled out an envelope, cream-colored, heavy paper, my name written on the front in Eleanor's handwriting. "She left this with us, instructions to give it to you when the trust was transferred." I took the envelope with shaking hands. I couldn't open it there, not in front of strangers, not in this sterile bank office. "We'll need you to sign some paperwork," the woman said gently, "and we should discuss options for managing the funds. But there's no rush. Take your time." I signed things without reading them. My hand moved automatically. All I could think about was the envelope, Eleanor's last words to me. They gave me a temporary debit card, said the full amount would be available in 48 hours, asked if I needed help getting home. I said no. I walked out of that bank in a daze, envelope clutched to my chest. Down Flatbush Avenue in the spring sunshine, people rushing past me while I stood there unable to move. I ended up in Prospect Park, sat on a bench near the lake, watching ducks paddle across the water. Families everywhere, kids playing, couples holding hands, life happening all around me while I held this envelope and tried to find the courage to open it. Finally, when I couldn't wait anymore, I slid my finger under the seal and pulled out 2 pages, covered front and back with Eleanor's handwriting. "My dearest Sunday girl, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And if you're reading this, it means you needed this money. I've made Patricia promise not to give you this letter unless you truly needed it. So I'm guessing things got hard. I'm guessing you're struggling. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I wish I could be there to help you through whatever you're facing. Let me tell you about the accident. I never told you the whole story because I didn't want you to worry. But you should know. That delivery truck hit me when I was crossing the street carrying groceries home. The driver was texting, not paying attention. I flew 15 feet. I thought I was going to die. In the hospital, in all that pain, all I could think about was you. Who would call you on Sundays? Who would make sure you were eating enough? Who would love you the way you deserved to be loved? I couldn't leave you alone. I couldn't leave you unprotected. So when the lawyers talked about suing, about getting money for my injuries, I saw an opportunity. I could have used that settlement money. My apartment was falling apart. I was tired. I wanted to retire. I could have traveled, bought new clothes, lived comfortably for once in my life. But I didn't need those things. What I needed was to know you'd be okay. What I needed was to protect you even after I was gone. You're probably crying right now. Stop it. This isn't sad. This is the happiest thing I ever did. This is my gift to you. My protection, my love made real. I want you to use this money. Don't you dare put it in a bank and leave it there out of guilt or some sense that you don't deserve it. You deserve everything. You deserve a beautiful home. You deserve nice clothes. You deserve to eat good food and feel safe and not worry every second about money. Buy yourself that house you always talked about. The one with the big kitchen and the garden. Make it beautiful. Fill it with plants like I filled my apartment. Grow gardenias on the windowsill. And I want you to do something else. I want you to help people. Not because you have to, but because you want to. Because you understand what it's like to be vulnerable and scared. Because you have a gift for making people feel seen. I've left instructions with Patricia about a charity I want you to start in my name. A hospice wing where people can die with dignity, surrounded by beauty and kindness. Where families don't have to choose between care and bankruptcy. Where death isn't terrifying, but peaceful. You always said I died well. That I was lucky to have good care at the end. I want everyone to have that. And I know you'll make it happen. I need you to understand something, Sunday Girl. This money isn't just money. It's proof that you matter. It's proof that you were loved completely, unconditionally, forever. Every dollar represents a Sunday morning phone call. Every cent is me telling you that you're worth protecting. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for having this. Don't let anyone convince you to share it with people who don't deserve it. This is yours, protected, given freely because I loved you. I wish I could see your face right now. I bet you're sitting somewhere quiet, crying, trying to process this. I bet you're overwhelmed. That's okay. Take your time. The money will wait. Patricia will help you with everything, but promise me something. Promise me you'll let yourself be happy. Promise me you'll let yourself believe you deserve good things. Promise me you'll stop punishing yourself for other people's failures. You are enough. You always were. You didn't need this money to be worthy of love. But I wanted you to have it anyway. I love you, Sunday Girl. I've loved you since you were a little thing, following me around asking questions. I've loved you through every Sunday phone call, every laugh, every tear, every moment of your life that I was lucky enough to witness. I'm gone, but I'm not gone. I'm in every dollar, every dream you build, every person you help, every time you feel safe and secure and loved. Live well, my darling. Live beautifully. Live without fear. You're going to be okay. I've made sure of it. Always, Eleanor. I sat on that bench and cried until I had nothing left. People walked past, probably thinking I'd lost someone. And I had. But I'd also found something. Proof that love doesn't end. That protection endures. That some people save you even after they're gone. The world looked different when I finally stood up, brighter. The spring sunshine felt warm on my face instead of mocking. The families in the park looked like possibilities instead of reminders of what I'd lost. I walked the whole way home, 4 miles. I wanted to feel my legs working, my heart beating. I wanted to feel alive. When I got back to the apartment, I looked around at the sloped ceilings and the one window and I thought, I'm leaving. I'm leaving this place and everything it represents. I'm leaving the shame and the fear and the smallness. Eleanor had given me wings. Now I just had to learn how to fly. The first week I did nothing. I was terrified to touch the money. What if it disappeared? What if it was a mistake? What if I woke up and it was all a dream? I checked my account balance 15 times a day. The numbers didn't change. $892,000, real, mine, protected. I started small. New clothes, nothing fancy, just things that fit, that didn't smell like thrift stores and desperation. a good winter coat, shoes that didn't hurt. The golden mustard sweater went into a donation bag, not because I didn't love it anymore, but because I didn't need to cling to it. I bought groceries, real groceries, fresh vegetables, good meat. I cooked Eleanor's recipes from that old cookbook, and I cried while I ate, tasting her love in every bite. I started sleeping through the night. The knot in my chest that had been there for 2 years slowly loosened. I could breathe without it hurting. Patricia called weekly. We discussed investment strategies, ways to make the money grow, plans for the future. She was patient with my questions, never made me feel stupid for not understanding financial terms. And we talked about the hospice wing. Eleanor had left detailed notes about what she wanted: a place in Queens, near where she'd lived, private rooms with windows, gardens where families could sit, no fluorescent lighting, no industrial smells, a place that felt like home. I met with architects, designers, hospice directors, people who understood what Eleanor had envisioned. They didn't just want my money, they wanted to honor her vision. They called it the Eleanor Chen Dignity Wing. I cried at every meeting, but they were good tears, proud tears. A month after the bank revelation, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mom?" My son's voice. I hadn't heard it in over a year. My first instinct was to hang up, but I didn't. "What do you want?" I heard. "About the money. Can we talk?" The money, of course. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I've missed you." Not, "I regret what I did." Just, "I heard about the money." "How did you hear?" Word gets around. Look, I know things have been complicated, but you're my mother. We should talk about this. Family should stick together. Family. The word tasted like poison. "We should meet," he continued when I didn't respond. "Clear the air. Move forward." I thought about Eleanor's letter. "Don't let anyone convince you to share it with people who don't deserve it." "No," I said. "Mom, be reasonable. Whatever happened, we can work through it. Family is family. You stole from me. You took everything. You left me with nothing. Your wife told me I smelled at your son's birthday party while I was starving." Silence. Then, "That was a misunderstanding. Things got out of hand, but we can fix this. I'm still your son." Being my son didn't stop you from destroying me. Being my son didn't make you care when I had nowhere to live. Being my son meant nothing when you had the chance to do the right thing. He stopped, started again. "We need to discuss how to handle this money. There are tax implications, investment strategies. You can't just do this alone." "I have lawyers, I have financial advisors, I have everything I need. What I don't have is a son who cares about me. What I don't have is family." "Don't say that. Goodbye." I hung up, blocked the number, sat there shaking, but not from fear, from power, from the knowledge that I could say no, that I didn't owe him anything, that Eleanor's protection extended even to this. He showed up at my apartment 3 days later, him and his wife, knocking on my door at 8 in the morning. I looked through the peephole, saw them standing there dressed nicely, holding a bouquet of flowers. Apology flowers, manipulation flowers. I didn't open the door. "Mom, we know you're in there," my son called. "We just want to talk. 5 minutes." His wife added, "We're so happy for you. We want to celebrate. Family should celebrate together. Family." That word again. I stood on the other side of the door, silent, watching them through the tiny circle of glass. My son looked tired, older. His wife looked angry under her smile. They knocked again, called out, pleaded, said all the right words in all the wrong ways. I turned around and walked away. Let them knock, let them call. Let them stand in the hallway looking foolish while I made coffee and sat in my small apartment and felt nothing but peace. They left eventually. The flowers stayed outside my door. I left them there until they wilted, until a neighbor threw them away. I never touched them. But the surprise came from someone else entirely. Someone I hadn't expected. Derek Morrison, my son's former business partner. The man who'd helped him set up the power of attorney scheme. The man who'd been there when they sold my house, who'd facilitated the whole thing. He called me. I almost didn't answer. But something in his voice when he left a voicemail made me pick up. Ms. Richardson, this is Derek Morrison. I know you have no reason to trust me. I know I'm part of what happened to you. But I need to talk to you, please. It's important. We met in a coffee shop in downtown Brooklyn. Neutral territory. I brought Patricia with me, not taking any chances. Derek looked terrible, thin, stressed. He ordered coffee but didn't drink it, just stared at it like it might have answers. I'm sorry, he said finally. I know that doesn't mean anything, but I need you to know I'm sorry. Why now? I asked. Because I can't sleep. Because my wife left me. Because every time I close my eyes, I see your face the day you found out. And I know I did that. I helped do that. He pulled out a folder, thick with documents. This is everything, every email, every text message, every piece of paperwork that shows what we did, how we planned it, how we executed it. I stared at the folder. Why are you giving me this? Because it's eating me alive, because my father died last month, and at the funeral my mother told me I was a good son. And I realized I'm not. I'm the kind of son who helps steal from someone's mother. I'm the kind of person who ruins lives for money. He pushed the folder across the table. There's enough here to prove fraud, to prove intent. I don't know if it'll help you legally, but you deserve to have it. You deserve to know the truth. Patricia took the folder, flipped through it quickly. Her expression changed. This is damning, she said quietly. Derek nodded. I'll testify. If you want to pursue anything, I'll tell the truth about everything. I don't care what happens to me. I looked at this man who'd helped destroy my life, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, just exhaustion. Your father died? I asked. Yeah, heart attack, sudden. I'm sorry. He looked up, surprised. Why would you be sorry, after what I did to you? Because losing a parent is hard. No matter what else is true, that's hard. His eyes filled. He looked away. I don't deserve your kindness. It's not for you. It's for me. I'm not carrying hate anymore. I don't have room for it. I stood up. Patricia gathered the documents. We left Derek sitting there, crying into his cold coffee. In the car, Patricia said, This changes things. We could pursue charges. Criminal charges. With his testimony, we have a real case. I thought about it, about the satisfaction of seeing my son punished, about justice, about revenge. No, I said, I don't want to spend the next year in court. I don't want to see him. I don't want to think about him. I want to move on. You're sure? I'm sure. Keep the documents, in case he ever comes after me again. But otherwise, I'm done. The real work began then. Finding land for the hospice wing. Eleanor had left enough in the trust to cover the initial construction, and I pledged more. It was going to be beautiful. Everything she'd dreamed of. I met families who were going through what Eleanor went through at the end, who were terrified about costs, about care, about their loved ones dying in fear. I listened to their stories. I held their hands. I promised them that soon there would be a place where death wasn't terrifying, but peaceful. And I started looking for a house, something outside the city, space, light, room to breathe. I found it in Ulster County, 2 hours north of Brooklyn, an old farmhouse on 5 acres. It needed work, but it had good bones, big kitchen, wide windows, room for a garden. When the realtor showed me the property, I stood in the kitchen and cried. This was it. This was the house Eleanor wanted me to have. I put in an offer that day, all cash. The sellers accepted immediately. I moved in 3 months later. hired contractors to fix what needed fixing, bought furniture slowly, carefully, choosing pieces I loved, planted a garden, put gardenias on the kitchen windowsill. For the first time in 2 years, I felt at home. The hospice wing broke ground 6 months after the bank revelation. There was a ceremony, press, local politicians saying nice things. But what mattered was the families who showed up, the people who would use this place, who would benefit from Eleanor's love extending beyond her own life. I spoke at the ceremony. I told them about Eleanor, about Sunday phone calls and gardenias and unconditional love, about how some people protect you even after they're gone. I showed them her picture, talked about her life as a home health aide, caring for others, always putting everyone else first, about the accident that could have broken her but instead became the vehicle for this final gift. She wanted people to die with dignity, I said. She wanted death to be peaceful, not terrifying. She wanted families to have time together without the fear of bankruptcy and abandonment. This building is her legacy. This is her love made real. There wasn't a dry eye in the audience. Afterward, people came up to me, shared their own stories, told me about the people they'd lost, the fear they'd faced, the gratitude they felt that this place would exist. One woman, probably my age, held my hands and said, "My mother died in a state facility. No privacy, no dignity, no peace. I've carried that guilt for 15 years. Thank you for making sure other people don't have to go through that." I hugged her. We cried together. Strangers bound by loss and love and the belief that people deserve better. That night, back in my farmhouse, I stood in my kitchen and talked to Eleanor like I used to. Told her about the ceremony, about the people who showed up, about how her dream was becoming real. I felt her there, not literally, but in the warmth of the kitchen, in the scent of the gardenias, in the peace that had finally settled into my bones. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for saving me. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for knowing I'd need this before I knew." The response came not in words, but in feeling. A warmth that spread through my chest, a certainty that everything was exactly as it should be. I was 60 years old. I'd lost everything and been given it back. I'd been betrayed and saved. I'd learned that family isn't always blood, and love doesn't end with death. I was starting over. But it didn't feel like starting over. It felt like arriving. Like all those years of struggle had been leading to this kitchen, this house, this peace. I thought about my son sometimes, wondered if he regretted what he'd done, wondered if his wife ever thought about the woman she'd humiliated at a 7-year-old's birthday party. I didn't reach out, didn't try to reconcile. I'd learned that some bridges are meant to burn. That closure doesn't require conversation. That peace comes from within, not from forcing people to acknowledge their cruelty. Derek called once, 6 months after our coffee shop meeting, said he'd moved away, started over, was trying to be a better person. I wished him well and meant it. Then I deleted his number. The golden mustard sweater was long gone, given to Goodwill along with all the other clothes from that terrible year. I didn't need to remember that version of myself. She'd served her purpose. She'd survived. Now she could rest. I bought new clothes, colors I loved, fabrics that felt good against my skin. Nothing expensive, just nice. Just mine. My body changed. The weight I'd lost from stress came back in healthy ways. I started walking the property every morning, started cooking Eleanor's recipes again, started taking care of myself the way she'd always wanted me to. The physical transformation mirrored the internal one. I looked in the mirror and recognized myself again. Not the broken woman from the attic apartment, not the desperate one who'd stood in the rain, but me, whole, healed, strong. The anniversary of Eleanor's death came. 2 years and 6 months since I'd held her hand and watched her slip away. I drove to the cemetery with fresh gardenias, sat by her grave and told her everything. About the money, the house, the hospice wing, the healing, the peace. "You saved me," I said out loud, not caring who heard. "You saved me, and I didn't even know I needed saving. You loved me so much, you protected me from beyond the grave. How do I thank you for that? How do I ever repay that kind of love?" The answer came in Eleanor's voice, clear as if she were sitting next to me. "You don't repay it. You pass it on." So that's what I did. I became involved in elder advocacy, started speaking about financial abuse, shared my story to help others recognize the signs. Because the statistics are staggering. According to American statistics, about 4 million seniors are victimized every year. American research indicates that over 5 million seniors are abused every year. It happens in every neighborhood, every income level, every family, and most people never recover. They die poor, isolated, convinced they deserved it. I didn't deserve what happened to me. And I'm lucky. Lucky that Eleanor had the foresight to protect me. Lucky that she loved me enough to plan for my future. Lucky that she turned her pain into my salvation. But most people don't have an Eleanor. Most people don't have someone protecting them from beyond the grave. They need to protect themselves. So here's what I tell people now, anyone who'll listen. Watch for the signs. When someone suddenly becomes very interested in your finances, when they isolate you from other family, when paperwork appears that you don't fully understand, when decisions are made without your input, when you feel afraid to say no, trust your instinct. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Get second opinions. Talk to people outside the family. Document everything. Don't sign anything unless you fully understand it. And if you've already been victimized, know this. It's not your fault. The people who betray you are masters of manipulation. They make you feel like you're the problem, like you're too stupid or too difficult or too demanding. They make you doubt yourself until you don't trust your own judgment. But you're not the problem. They are. And there are resources, legal aid, elder advocacy groups, people who will believe you and help you. Don't die thinking you deserved what happened to you. You didn't. You never did. A year after the bank revelation, the Eleanor Chen Dignity Wing opened its doors. 12 private rooms, each one with a window overlooking gardens we'd planted, comfortable furniture, soft lighting, a kitchen where families could cook if they wanted, a chapel for those who needed it. The first patient was a woman named Gloria, 78, pancreatic cancer, no family, no money, terrified of dying alone. I sat with her the first night, held her hand, told her about Eleanor, about being loved, about being protected. "You're not alone," I promised. "Not anymore." Gloria cried, not from fear, from relief, from the knowledge that she mattered, that her death would be peaceful, that someone cared. She lived 3 more weeks, comfortable, pain-managed, surrounded by kindness. She died on a Tuesday morning with me sitting beside her, holding her hand, telling her it was okay to go, just like I'd done with Eleanor. After Gloria's death, I found a letter she'd written to me. Shaky handwriting, but clear. "Thank you for giving me dignity," it said. "Thank you for making death less scary. Thank you for proving that strangers can love you when family won't." I framed that letter, hung it in my office at the hospice wing, a reminder of why this mattered, a reminder of Eleanor's legacy continuing. The years passed. The hospice wing served hundreds of people. Families sent thank you notes, donations in memory of loved ones. The word spread. Other organizations reached out, wanting to replicate our model. Eleanor's love was multiplying, exponentially, eternally. My son never reached out again after that day outside my door. I heard through distant cousins that his business failed, that his wife left him, that he'd moved away. I felt nothing, not satisfaction, not vindication, nothing. He'd made his choices. I'd made mine. His life was no longer my concern. Sometimes people ask if I'm lonely, living alone in that farmhouse, no family nearby. No children who care. I tell them I'm not alone. I have Eleanor's love surrounding me like a blanket. I have the families at the hospice wing who've become my community. I have the garden and the gardenias and the quiet peace of knowing I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. I tell them that loneliness isn't about being alone. It's about feeling unseen, unloved, unprotected. I'm none of those things. I'm profoundly seen, deeply loved, eternally protected. Eleanor made sure of that. On what would have been her 80th birthday, I threw a party at the hospice wing, invited everyone, staff, volunteers, families, people who'd been touched by her legacy. We planted a gardenia tree in the courtyard, put a plaque underneath with her name and dates, and a simple inscription. She loved beyond death. I stood under that tree and I felt her there, in the scent of the gardenias, in the laughter of the people around me, in the warmth of the sun on my face. "I'm okay," I whispered. "You made sure of it. Your Sunday girl is okay." And I was. I am. I will be. Because some love doesn't end. Some protection endures. Some people save you even when they're gone. Eleanor gave me money. But more than that, she gave me proof. Proof that I mattered. Proof that I was worthy of love. Proof that someone, somewhere, believed I deserved to survive. That's the real inheritance. Not the dollars. The belief. The certainty that I was loved completely, unconditionally, forever. My daughter-in-law whispered that I smelled at a birthday party 2 years ago. She meant to humiliate me, to make me feel small and worthless and unwanted. She succeeded, for a while. But 2 weeks later, I walked into a bank and discovered that I'd been protected all along. That while she was whispering cruelty, Eleanor's love was waiting, growing, multiplying, ready to catch me when I fell. I don't smell like poverty anymore. I smell like gardenias, like fresh laundry and good food and soap that doesn't irritate my skin. But more than that, I smell like someone who's loved, someone who matters, someone who survived, and that's a scent no one can take away. So here's my question for you. Wherever you're listening from, have you ever been saved by love you didn't know existed? Have you ever discovered that someone was protecting you all along? Have you ever felt the bittersweet beauty of being loved by someone who's gone? If this story resonated with you, if it made you think of someone who protected you or someone you're trying to protect, leave a comment. Tell me where you're listening from. Tell me about the Eleanor in your life. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story, someone who's struggling with family betrayal or elder abuse or the belief that they don't matter, share it. Send it to them. Let them know they're not alone. Subscribe if you want more stories about survival and salvation and the kind of love that transcends death. Because these stories matter. Your story matters. You matter. Eleanor taught me that, and now I'm teaching you. Some people protect you forever, even when they're gone, especially when they're gone. Be that person for someone. Love someone so fiercely they feel it, even after you're not here anymore. Build protections that last. Create legacies that heal. That's how Eleanor lives on. Through me, through the hospice wing, through every person whose life is touched by the love she left behind. That's how any of us live on. Through love that refuses to end, through protection that endures, through the belief that people deserve dignity and safety and care. I'm 62 now. I've been given a second chance at life, a third chance, maybe a fourth. I'm not wasting it. I'm not hiding. I'm not letting shame or fear or cruelty define me. I'm living, fully, beautifully, gratefully. Because Eleanor made sure I could. Because love doesn't end. Because some protections are eternal. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing that this story, my story, matters. Now go live. Love someone fiercely. Protect someone completely. Build something that lasts beyond your life. That's how we honor the people who saved us. That's how we become the Eleanors for others. That's how love wins, always, forever, no matter what.